Hello everyone, it's Ren here. Welcome to my room, guys. I hope you're having a good Sunday so far. Today we're going to be talking about the 3 areas of growth for INFJs that I want to single out. Now, before I move on to this topic, which I hope will be of interest to you, don't forget that you can get my new novel, The Infinite Castle, and my book on the INFJ. Will I call it a bestseller at this point? I don't know, but it's very well received. Both available for less than $10 at the links below. And also, I have a Patreon page that you can subscribe to at the links below. That would be great for some exclusive content. So anyway, 3 areas of growth. There's many areas of growth for any people of any type. And to select the number 3 is somewhat of an arbitrary decision. At the same time, I was thinking that I have not actually done a lot of video content on areas of growth. I have done that a little bit, and I've certainly done that in the Ecstatic Soul. I mean, but maybe, some people would say like in kind of abstract and philosophical fashion. And people have always tended to be hungry for sort of more practical examples. And if I decide, as I will do in this video, to really just focus on 3 areas of growth, first of all, that allows me to have a compact video where I can still dedicate quite a bit of time to each area. And at the same time, it also gives me the opportunity to have more videos with more work on areas of growth. And you know what I also want to do? I also want to address areas that a lot of INFJs think are areas of growth, and where I want to say, I'm not saying they're not, but I'm saying there's other areas that are more important, and you might actually be better at this area than you think. Sure, you can continue to grow in this area, like you can continue to grow in most areas, but there's more pressing matters if you take that stuff seriously. So anyway, let's not waste any more time and get started. So the first, actually, you know what? I'll announce what the 3 areas are, and then I'll start exploring each one separately. Extroversion, number 1. Sensation, number 2. Rationality, number 3. Extroversion, sensation, rationality. If we think about these as areas of growth, I want you to just take a moment to think to yourself, is extroversion an area where I could grow? Is sensation an area where I could grow? And is rationality an area where I could grow? If the answer to all of these is yes, then it seems that I probably am on the right track, with picking these. I wasn't about to pick things like intuition or harmonization of social relations, or, being a good listener, or things like that, where INFJs are probably going to be better than most people, and better at it than most people anyway. But extroversion, sensation, rationality, these are areas where I think there's potential for clear growth, meaning that INFJs have a real potential in these areas, but a bit of self-work is needed. Extroversion, beginning with what is probably the most important, because it is the key to a lot of other growth areas, is to work on your extroversion. When I say that extroversion is a growth area, I'm not saying that you, INFJ, ought to become an extrovert. I'm not saying that you ought to become what you're not, whom you're not. If you're an INFJ, you're an introvert, and that's fine, okay? However, there's a couple points to make here. Extroversion is not cool. It's not really a cool word with a lot of people in the personality community, especially introverts. That is to say that there's been an appropriation of introversion as something that's very positive, okay? And to some extent, this has been a very good development, because it is undoubtedly the case that in society at large, there is a pressure toward extroversion. That is to say that when you're in the workplace, where you're going to be spending most of the time, most of your weeks, for most of your life, there'll be a pressure toward extroversion, toward being assertive, toward being forward, toward talking to people, toward networking, toward doing all these things. When you're looking for a relationship, when you're going on dates, if you appear more extroverted, you appear more confident usually, and that also will guarantee some more success in social relationships. So there is that bias toward extroversion that has been integrated by a lot of people, including people who don't even know about personality stuff. There's been this reappropriation of the value of introversion for its own sake as well, and that has become, that is continuing to happen. I think that Carl Jung laid the groundwork for it, but it has been continuing to happen, and it's a very good thing, because there is nothing inherently bad about introversion. There's nothing inherently worse about introversion than about extroversion. In some sense, you could say that extroversion and introversion are different, but they're neutral in terms of which one is better, Certainly, in a lot of cases, in society at large, it helps to be more extroverted in a lot of jobs. You could probably make the point that there are jobs where it might help to be more introverted. I'm thinking of some IT jobs and things like that. But in any case, this reclaiming of introversion as something that's not bad, something that has the right to exist and has its own value, is great. However, and I've pointed this out before, there has also been, in the personality community and at a wider scale, mostly on the internet, a tendency to become a little bit complacent about introversion. And that concerns INFJs as well. When I say being complacent about introversion, is to say that not only there are some people who now think like other people about extroverts, therefore they think that introverts are actually better than extroverts, and they're proud and they would not like to be an extrovert. So in a way, they're doing the same wrong thing as the other camp, but in the opposite direction. That's not good. And linked to it, there's this tendency to think, okay, I'm an introvert. As an INFJ or as an INFP, ISFP, ISTP, I'm an introvert. Therefore, if I do something and it doesn't go well, there's no need for me to do self-work. There's no need for me to think about how I could learn to do it better. There's no need for me to learn to kind of accept failure and address the obstacles so that failure can become success. Because I'm an introvert. That's who I am. I'm not meant for these things. Sometimes people think I'm too high up in the sky for these things. Now here, that's not a good development. It's not a good development because, first of all, it doesn't help with growth. It doesn't help with getting you out of your comfort zone. It's also simply not true, because a lot of the time, these tasks where you might have had a hard time or failed the first time, you certainly can be done, but primarily it's for your own good. It's not good to not think in terms of growth, because otherwise you're just staying in your comfort zone, you're at a standstill, and sure, like there's no massive disturbances in this comfort zone because you're staying shielded from everything by just identifying with introversion, but at the same time, you're not giving yourself the chance to grow, and a lot of joy, a lot of happiness come with that. So be careful with glorifying introversion too much. And INFJs are certainly concerned, certainly people who should think about that, because INFJs are FE users. INFJs online are more likely probably to have a little bit more struggle with their FE than INFJs who spend most of their time not online. So I think that on the internet, including in this YouTube community, there's probably a lot of INFJs whose FE could grow further. But there might be this temptation to not channel this, in a way, this power that they have, because they expect some hurt or some failure. But that's preventing yourself from growing. That's preventing yourself from being more extroverted. Not from becoming extroverted, because that's not what you are, but from being more extroverted. There's nothing that can be bad about becoming more extroverted, just in the same way that for an extrovert, nothing bad can happen from learning to appreciate the value of being more introverted. Okay, so that's for extroversion. clear area of growth the most important. Now, the second one that I had listed was sensation. Sensation. Why sensation? Well, sensation, as you might have noticed, is associated with the other extroverted function of the INFJ, because don't forget that although we are NI dominants, we are a bundle of 4 functions, 2 of which are extroverted. So it's not like becoming more extroverted is just this fantasy that is coming from the sky and we don't really know where it comes from. No, it's right there in your stack. You have 4 functions, 2 of them are extroverted. So half of you, in a sense, is extroverted. But it's true that given the hierarchy of the functions and your dominant functions orientation, you're going to have a preference for introversion, but the potential for extroversion is really there through FE and also through SE. Now, the thing about SE and the thing about sensation in general is, again, if we're going to be talking about like working on your SE function for its own sake, I don't really see what the point of it is, because that's just a means. Why would you want to work on your SE function if nothing concretely follows? Like if you're going to be developing or trying to integrate your SE function a little further, what are the benefits? Right? If you have read this book, you will know that I am a strong believer in the idea that to develop the SE function for the INFJ, a very good way is to actually engage in the FE function first, because by placing yourself in what we might call an extroverted situation in the real world, okay, in the real world, I'm talking in the non-computer world, you'll inevitably be engaging SE a lot more than if you were to not engage FE and be in a more introverted world. So that's one way of engaging SE. But again, the important question is, why would you want to do that? Why is it an area of growth? One of the big challenges for an NI dominant, that's going to be a big challenge for an INTJ as well. And it's going to be a big challenge for other introverts, but I think the introverted perceivers, in other words, types whose main function is not a function of judgment. It's not a function of making deliberating about the external world. It's just relating to our world. Introverted, therefore, relating mostly to an internal world. Now, these types can be very solipsistic. Okay, they can even come to be NI dominants, almost entirely just NI dominants, with not a lot of development on FE, on TI, or on SE. Works for some people, maybe works for hermits and for mystics and the like, but for a lot of people, more balance is better. And the best way to sort of counteract the solipsistic tendencies of introverted intuition of NI is presence, is being in touch with the present moment. Now, being in touch with the present moment is not just something like meditation, okay? I think that's a bit of a fallacy that we hear too often. People think, okay, if I meditate, I'm just going to be really in touch with the present moment. Meditation is great, and meditation certainly helps with mindfulness and presencing to some extent, but there are parts of the day where you need to be able to not meditate, go for a walk or be outside and really pay attention to what's around you, because solipsism and alienation, which are strongly correlated with the NI function in the dominant position, are functions that tend to make you sort of fleet through the days and the weeks as if you're not really there, as if you belong to another dimension. Now, it gives you the sense of being timeless, being an old wise man or an old wise woman. I mean, there's all these archetypes that are certainly valuable in their own sake, but that the obverse of that is this difficulty with being in the present moment, the exact opposite of SE dominance, like as ESFPs and ESTPs, for instance, and high SE users in general. You're never going to be a high SE user as such, but an appreciation of the beauty of presence is fundamental to more SE integration and therefore growth on that front. You know, when I go for a walk, I walk at least an hour a day at a good pace, and there's parks around me. I try not to listen to too much music, or when I do listen to music, I don't listen to music with lyrics. I listen to a lot of ambient music. I listen to some some real footage kind of music, like wind or music of like really cold places, just to really help me focus on the present moment. And I often I see a beautiful tree, and I don't just look at it and say, oh, that's beautiful. I actually touch the trunk and feel the texture. Sometimes I just kind of feel my hands. The sense of touch is something that's really, really important, and it's accessible to everybody. Just to be in touch with your surroundings, that creates a lot more potential for this sense of belonging in the world. Okay, so it's something that's not to be underestimated. And the third area of growth could be the most controversial. I have called it rationality. And I say controversial because as much as extroversion and then sensation are probably not going to be very controversial, in the sense that it's, I think, mostly admitted that INFJs are, not in their comfort zone when they're in these areas. Rationality, I think there's going to be some INFJs that are going to want to beg to differ with me on this front. Just have a little bit of coffee there because it's going to go cold otherwise. Already a bit lukewarm. Rationality. I tend to be seen by the community on YouTube as a more thinky kind of INFJ. So I think that there's probably a lot of people in my audience who resonate with that and who would see themselves as quite rational people. So first of all, let's think about the whole community of INFJs, not just the community, that subsection of the community of INFJs that happen to be following me. I'm very grateful for that. That's not the point. INFJs tend to be much more intuitive and much more driven, not by emotion as such, but by a certain sense of feeling, and the way that Jung means the word feeling. Driven by values, things like that, that have a rational element to them. But there's also the domain of rationality, which reasons in abstraction from values to attain the most impartial standpoint that is possible. TI leads are very good at that. They tend to be very good at that. INFJs with high TI tend to be very good at that, but there's INFJs whose TI is not as developed or not as valued as in the case of other INFJs. I've made quite a few videos on the growth of TI for INFJs, comparing the TI of INFJs to the TI of INTPs. So I'm not going to go in a lot more detail on this front, but just to say that rationality, in the sense of impartial arguments, skepticism, like a priori skepticism about all positions until convinced, is something that can really boost the promotion of your values. Because if you're good at promoting your values and at influencing other people, and that's through the FE function mostly, to embrace your values, or at least to appreciate your values, but sometimes to even implement your values. Now that comes with extroversion. If you don't value extroversion, that won't happen. If you can bring rationality into the mix, you can ensure that the influence that you have is not arbitrary. The most arbitrary influence of an INFJ high FE users, or perhaps even more commonly ENFJs in this case, is cults, of course. Now, cults are very good at influencing. The INFJs that manage to lead cults clearly have managed to grow in the direction of extroversion, but it's not necessarily a positive thing. To be able to do that for the best, and not for purposes that are very dubious, you need to be also able to have a very well-defined and critical rationality at the heart of your headspace. And if you could combine the rationality with the extroversion, the ability to influence, and the ability to be in the present moment, you can be a really great whole person. And I'm asking you to just consider that and, share with me your thoughts. Don't forget about my Patreon and about my books. And I will see you next week. See you guys. Bye-bye.